Okay, folks, we'll let these guys get started. First of all, thank you for coming along to the second of our three-part series of talks. So we're talking about performance tonight, and what better to have three of our youngest, fastest runners who've been to the latest World Championships. So we'll probably be an hour or so, and we'll let them kick off. So yeah, thanks for coming. Obviously each of the talks are free, which is great, but we do ask a charity donation. So I think these guys have been kind enough to support Ollie's charity, Maggie's.
Maggie's, it's not my charity.
Yeah, that you had supported on the previous talk, and you obviously know what that worked for. So we do have Ollie's Magic Bucket here, and we'll put a link and a QR code on the talk itself. Yeah, we'll let these guys get started. So we've got Naomi, Holly, and Sasha, for anybody that doesn't know them.
Nice. Evening, everyone. We're just going to start by giving our kind of current backgrounds, what brings us to Edinburgh. So we all studied in Edinburgh. I stayed on and now work as a data analyst.
I also studied at Edinburgh and now I work in flooding.
And yeah, I did sports science at Edinburgh and now I'm kind of just doing a few random jobs until I go back to uni in September.
Nice. So yeah, I guess first we got a bit of a disclaimer on Ollie's little blurb for the evening. He said we're going to teach you how to run fast or something along those lines. We're probably not going to be able to do that. But what we're going to do is talk about our trip to Thailand recently. So the World Mountain Running Champs in 2022 were in Thailand. We all got very lucky and got selected for an awesome trip. So we're going to give a bit of our background, how we got into hill running, how we came to do the trial, because we all kind of came from three different directions, how our preparation was, how the trip itself went, and then kind of what we're up to now and what we're thinking ahead to do. So yeah. Oh yeah, we've also got kind of quiz questions dotted around the whole talk, and there are prizes for anyone that guesses correctly and maybe in some cases guesses most closely, I guess. So yeah, a little incentive to get involved. But otherwise, yeah, we're going to start by talking about where we came from. Yeah.
Oh no, we've got a quiz, we've got a quiz question.
Oh yeah, okay, sorry. First quiz question. So we all came from different kind of running backgrounds, but there was one thing that kind of united those three, the three of us. So first quiz question, what other sport were we all involved with prior to hill running?
Mud wrestling.
Almost. Pretty much, actually.
Orienteering?
Yeah, orienteering, awesome.
And does anyone know which club? Oh, it's been given away. Maybe. So yeah, me and Sasha were both part of Gramp in the northeast. So those pictures are from 2011. And Holly did a little bit down south as well.
So that's me starting first. I started running really young, as you can see, in primary school, and we had a little fun run at school and I beat all the boys, and probably one of my best races yet, really. But it kind of what prompted me to sort of go home and say to my mum, oh, can I join an athletics club? So she took me down to the club that she used to run at, which was Dartford Harriers. And I never really left. I'm still a member of the club. I started off in the Dartford Dashers group doing all the field events, track events. Quickly got swept into middle distance, long distance running. So I mainly did cross country and track. Ended up steeplechasing and I ended up going to World Juniors in the top corner there. Only to not really make it out of the heats and fall in the water jump. But that was my background.
Oh,
I missed one.
Skipped Sasha. Or not. Maybe it was me. Yeah, so I guess I came to competitive running a little bit later. My family we're all like very outdoorsy, so we sort of got chucked into kind of any and every outdoor activity that was going. So a lot of time was spent like up hills, but not necessarily kind of running up them. And I spent a lot of my kind of up until my like early teenage years, kind of trying to be a fish in the pool, but not really succeeding particularly well, and was probably always better at the land training. So I did the odd like kind of primary school, early secondary school like cross country race, and a little road race there. And then joined Aberdeen AC when I was like 14, 15, and sort of got sucked into kind of cross country and track, which is kind of the way I guess the groups within the athletics club worked. Like the junior groups were very much focused on track and cross country. So that picture on the top right hand side, me and Holly, before we actually knew each other, happened to be running next to each other in a race. So that was kind of how I came into running, and then spent most of my kind of teenage years doing track and cross country.
We must have missed Sasha. Do you want to do it on the PowerPoint?
I think,
I think you were before. Oh, no. Well, you've been deleted, Sasha, but
that's
if
fine.
you want to talk anyway.
I hope there's no other slides missing.
Oh,
No, I should be all right. I got into hill running from a slightly different route, I guess. So from basically sitting on my dad's back, I was an orienteer. I learned to read a map quite young, get outside, get outdoors, get off the paths, right in the terrain. Did my first course kind of without any shadowing of my parents when I was 7 years old, which in hindsight is kind of, I think, a bit too young. But I remember it quite well. And I had quite a good kind of upbringing through that route. Then inevitably, like, you get to an age of around 13, 14 where you start realizing you need to kind of do a bit of training on the side to keep up with your competitors. So I got into hill running through Cosmic Hill Bashers. Great club up in Aberdeen. I was kind of the youngest one there by probably 30, 40 years. And in hindsight, must have been a bit weird to run with such a young boy in the hills around Aberdeenshire. Was quickly swept up by Robbie Simpson as well, who used to wait outside my school and take me on runs up Sculty. That was quite nice. So definitely quite inspirational in the early days. And then also actually eventually joined Naomi on the track a bit just to do kind of interval work, never really racing, but did kind of know her through the orienteering route as well. So definitely crossed paths there. Does that bring us up to about uni? Probably. Cool.
So I've spent loads of years running on the track and cross country. We used to go on quite a lot of family holidays doing Munros and walking. We used to go to North Wales and Scotland quite a bit. And I used to really like that, and I really wanted to get into hill running. But kind of living in southeast London doesn't really facilitate that. But the top left picture is actually the one race I found in the south of England, which is they actually have a South of England mountain running champs on the Isle of Wight. And it's me looking very ill racing up the road, up onto the steep climb. So that was my first ever mountain race, and I didn't really do that many until I kind of came to uni. But again, I kind of still stayed racing track until lockdown. I feel like lockdown made me realise actually track probably stressed me out a bit, and kind of made the jump to try and do mountain running properly, maybe try and train for it a bit more. But I kind of decided that 2 weeks before Euro trials and went into Euro trials with 3K training, but I still made Europeans last year, which is where that picture's taken. So then after that, I kind of realised that I could be maybe quite good at it, so stayed at it. Now we've got Sasha.
I'll maybe go stand over here, I just realised. So came to uni in Edinburgh, was very much an orienteer. There's no photos of it there really, but I kind of pursued the junior international kind of series of like junior world champs every year for the British squad. Kind of focused on that every year and spent all my summer doing it. Always had the kind of slight sadness that I wasn't able to do more hill racing, but the calendar was just absolutely filled with it through the winter as well, doing training camps. So it was a good form of training, but it was never really possible to do enough racing to really kind of get involved enough. Saying that, I did go to a couple of kind of these junior selection races for things like junior home internationals, but the emphasis wasn't orienteering until I kind of hit senior. And then this kind of overlapped with finishing uni and a point where most orienteers have to decide that either they'll move to Scandinavia where there's a lot more forest and you can get a lot better orienteering and continue being competitive in your senior ranks, or essentially get into mountain running, which is the two main streams. For me, it was pretty easy. I was kind of faced with a decision, but like I had too many friends here in Edinburgh. I really enjoyed the kind of culture that we have here, and I was already a member of Carnethy, getting involved with more things like that. So it was an easy decision for me in the end. Dipped into a few kind of things, but very quickly COVID came. I kind of lost all my motivation because I do kind of need like quite a regular routine to keep training. I was brought out of that by Ali Masson. We did like a really cool 24-hour round. Did a winter talk on that a couple of years ago. And then off the back of lockdown, managed to kind of get my head back into training, and yeah, had a pretty good year last year. Did 3 peaks there on the left. I was really quite keen to try and get selections to European champs where Holly was. It was going quite well, but about a minute before that photo was taken, I'd fallen on my knee and kind of did something to my tendon, which kind of stopped me from running half an hour later. So I had to drop out, had to take a month off, kind of lost the motivation again. But, you know, by the time summer was there, I picked up racing again. And around about the time of the trial, I was just about ready to kind of give it a good shot, which was around, September last year. So that kind of brings it up to date.
And yeah, kind of, I guess, maybe more similar to Holly, during COVID and through the lockdowns, there were obviously no races. So just spending a lot more time on the hills instead of going to like a muddy field or an athletics track, we'd go up a hill instead. So yeah, just was starting to run a bit more in the hills. And I think actually the first trip I went on after lockdown was to go and do a Ramsey leg with Jamie Patterson, who's also a member of the club. And then during the start of 21, I did like a bit of a track season at the start, and then kind of when I finished uni, I moved down to Borrowdale in the Lakes to work in the youth hostel there. And if you're going to run there, you're going to run up a hill. And also in the Lakes, you can probably do about 3 hill races a week if you wanted to. Started doing a lot more hill racing there. And that was also the time of the Thailand that happened when we went in 22 was actually supposed to happen in November 21 originally. So that middle picture is from the trials that they held in September of 2021. By that stage, the race had already been postponed till February of 2022, but they still picked the team in September. So I was originally selected for that team that was supposed to go out in February by finishing 3rd at the trials. But they then, I think the organisation had said that Thailand had to have like 60 or 70% of their population vaccinated by the end of 2021 for the event to happen. And I don't think any countries had that by that stage. So it quite quickly got kind of postponed again to November. And yeah, obviously that's quite a big time gap. So the selection races kind of had to happen again from that. So that kind of brings me up to the trials, I guess.
The week before the trials, do you want to chat about the
Yes, so we were doing slightly different things the week before the trials. I'll let Holly cover her own situation, but me and Naomi were asked to support Tim Morgan, another member of the club, on his Ramsey. Tim's not had the best of luck on Ramsey so far, but he has, in our defence, chosen like May and snow times to do his attempt so far. He kind of continued that trend in September when he picked probably one of the windiest days of the year to do an attempt. Me and Naomi covered the first leg. It was really good fun, but obviously maybe a 50k run the week before. Mine
wasn't 50, I had a bike, but still quite long.
2 selection races the week later. Probably wasn't the best prep. Funny story from the trial actually. We were going up the first hill and I was borrowing a friend's bag, which managed to kind of undo itself, and it was still pitch black, which was kind of funny for September. But yeah, we kind of looked up and saw Tim's kit flying into the darkness. So yeah, sadly he did manage to complete, but like he did have horrible weather to contend with. So yeah.
And then I did the Braemar Highland Games the week before the trial, quite on the opposite, just a short kind of punchy 3-mile hill race, bit of speed, bit of fun.
And a bit dull.
A bit of money to come out of it as well. Not quite as brutal as you guys, but maybe slightly more sensible. So now we've got the trials.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah. So there's 2 trials really for 2 kind of events you could get picked for this kind of distance of 5 to 10k. So on the Friday night, we all drove, or Friday afternoon, Sasha drove us down to Keswick, and the trial was uphill only, up to the top of Skiddaw. We had a little lap round a playing field at the bottom, and then what was it, about 8k to the top of total? Yeah. What else is there to say really?
How did it go?
How did it go? For me, it went really well. I finished second. It was quite close between the filly who won and me. It was kind of a sprint finish, which you don't really expect for 8k of running uphill. It was kind of quite grim weather, like the pictures here just before we went into the clouds, before you hit the ridge. I feel like it was pretty claggy and grim, and I didn't realise quite how thick it would be at the top. Yeah.
You actually really couldn't see, like you could see possibly one person in front of you, but by the top. And I think there was one point where it really felt like you were on your own. So yeah, I was in the same race as Holly, and I didn't have a great day, to be honest. I think that was probably when I decided that actually part of the reward of getting to the top of the hill is getting to run back down it again. So yeah, I felt a bit flat, possibly due to the week before's antics, but I'd been feeling all right during the week, so I think it was maybe a slight off day at the same time. So I was, a bit further back down the field, and therefore not in a position to be selected for the uphill only race after that.
I had a pretty similar experience, I guess. I'd been putting my money on the uphill trial for some reason. Despite enjoying the downhills, I thought it would suit me more. I think what's maybe worth saying is that I hadn't properly met Holly at this point, and I had the worst Fiat Punto that's ever been manufactured to get us down to the race. And the amount I sweated before that trial in that car, thinking we were going to break down on the side of the motorway and spoil Holly's chances of going.
Mind.
She'd obviously been to the European. Yeah, no, it's nice knowing that in hindsight. But so yeah, I feel like I'd really exhausted myself that morning and probably didn't have much left for the trial. But no, to be honest, it went quite well. Paced it quite well. Ended up climbing up to 5th. Which was kind of the first reserve territory, but there was all these kind of rumors flying around already that you had to really consistently maybe have 2 good races in the trials because they were going to take quite slim teams out to the other side of the world. And for me, I think maybe with the knowledge that Andy Douglas, for example, who's sitting at the back, decided to sit this one out and would be an additional person to beat on the up and down, I kind of didn't really fancy my chances. So yeah. But it was a good experience nonetheless, and I'd done it back in 2019 and finished 5th as well, so it kind of seemed like a pretty typical place to be. Yeah.
A little shout out to James for carrying all our gear as well to the top.
Oh yeah.
Hero.
Of interest, what kind of times was that from Keswick?
Yeah, so it was a lap of what's the park?
Is it Fitz Park? Yeah, so it was it was about K, I think, on the flat, and then I can't remember the name of the route that you go out.
I think it's the main.
Hill.
It's just the main way.
Yeah, it's the main track, as you can probably see from the pictures. A big scar all the way up.
Yeah.
And it took about an hour or so.
Yeah,
I think. Was it?
I think it was a lot
I think we
quicker.
were
Bit less?
50 something. I think we were 50 something. You were probably 40.
It was a few minutes.
I think Jacob Adkin won. I think he probably did low 40s. So kind of running 5-minute Ks up quite a steep gradient. So you can imagine it's pretty fast.
Best bit though was getting the women's segment for the Skiddaw, taking it off Scout, who's the list of those top 8 are very, very fast people. Best bit of the day really. And yeah, it took us to Sunday. So the Saturday, I think, don't want to speak on behalf of you guys, I spent most of it in bed, or just walking around trying to rest up for the Sunday. So where was that? It was the Borders Way. Do you remember the name of the town?
It was just outside of Moffat.
Just outside of Moffat.
Yeah. towards the final?
Yeah, so these courses, again, actually kind of odd for a mountain race in the fact that there was like a mile flat to start and to finish, which kind of throws your pacing off a little bit in the way that like you don't want to start too fast, but you've got a mile flat in front of you, and especially being a track runner, it's kind of a bit daunting. We had pretty good weather, I'd say, for that. Pretty warm, not as warm as Thailand, but we, I think, again, really well for me. Again, I was finished second. Not quite as much of a battle with Philly, who won again, but for the third with Kate, I remember we were both sprinting in the final mile back on the road when it was really quite horrible. Yeah, how'd it go for you, Naomi?
Yeah, again, I struggled a bit on the ups. I think it's also quite hard mentally if you have a bad race on the Friday to then race again like 2 days later. But yeah, I really enjoyed the downhill and managed to kind of make up a bit of ground on that and finished in fourth, which given that Scout Adkin wasn't at the trial, it meant that it was kind of unlikely that it was going to be selected for the team, but it kind of put me in a reserve position for that. So yeah, kind of mixed bag, but okay.
Yeah, no, yeah, as I said, like I put quite a lot into the uphill, so kind of lost all hope, to be honest. But I think times like these is probably quite good because kind of end up relaxing a bit more and maybe stressing a bit less. So I think I definitely had quite a few pints at the pub the night before. A lot of people probably experienced that actually ends up helping in the end. And had a really good race with Andy Douglas in the end. So yeah, Angela Mudge actually planned the course. She planned it through this 4K, 5K kind of gradual uphill marsh that we had to run through.
I think he spent a lot of hours looking at a map trying to find
Yeah.
the hill
She
in
did.
the UK that had the closest profile
Yeah,
and a mile
yeah.
flat along the bottom.
And it was pretty
For the
bang
race.
on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she
it was
did a
really
good
bang on. So yes, flat mile to start, flat mile to finish. And that flat mile to finish was kind of crucial because Andy ended up catching me and overtaking me. But knowing that like you had to finish top 2 to get that auto selection, I was kind of quite content to let him pass. Not that I had any choice in the matter. And kind of gave him a handshake as he did so. And yeah, it was pretty buzzing, obviously, to make up for a bit of a poor race on Friday. So yeah.
So yeah, question.
What made me faint on the build up to my Thailand prep?
Sasha's short.
We'll maybe give this to the closest one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Having an injection.
Ooh.
No, but
Good.
good
that would
answer.
have been
Good
quite
guess.
likely.
Did you wear loads of clothes and prep for the heat?
That's the closest.
That's the closest.
Getting
We
closer.
actually forgot to chuck these out. These were supposed to go to the winners, so you
You
get
get
one.
orienteering.
And who said orienteering?
Oh, I got one.
Oh, you
There you
got
go.
one.
Oh, you got one. Oh, well, you have two. Have two.
Anyone want to improve on that? Something to do with heat,
Heat training.
Heat stroke.
kind of.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
there you go.
Who was that?
Is that you? Was that you, Andy? Yeah.
Yes.
So when we all got selected, I think like British Athletics kind of sent this email around to us that were encouraging us to try and get some heat acclimatization ready for the hot temperatures we'd kind of face in Thailand. And I know a few of the more pro athletes had like access to heat chambers and stuff, whereas I think me and Sasha kind of went for the approach of go to the sauna if you can and kind of wear jackets and more layers you can to run in. I overcooked the sauna a little bit. I think I almost fell asleep in there and then realised I'd been in there for quite a while, kind of quickly ran out and then blacked out. So I put a bit of a stop on the sauna sort of 4 weeks out.
As another bit of background, I had no idea that I was going to be going to Thailand at this point. I had not been selected. I was the first reserve for the up and down team. So yeah, you guys knew, but I was very unaware.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and just to give a bit of a timeline of like how far out we were, we had about 8 weeks to go. Obviously Naomi wasn't aware, but yeah, there's a few kind of key things in between.
That was the trial weekend.
Sasha watched the
Yeah.
funeral on the way back from
Yeah,
me.
probably helped the race as well. Or maybe, no, probably slowed me down. Yeah, so we were actually asked to sit out all these kind of fun races in between early September and early November. That was kind of the deal you had to make. Had to stock up on vaccines. We probably went overkill on the vaccines, but yeah, good nonetheless to get done. And yeah, no, I think if the next slide was it. Yeah, no. Oh,
That's my
yeah.
prep now.
Yeah, fair.
Anything else you want to say?
I've got a slide after, don't worry.
So to sum up my prep, I would one word say ill, because I got ill a lot. But from sitting in an ice bath after the up and down trial, I took a week off running because I felt really tired, because I'd kind of smashed a lot of stuff in the Alps at the end of August and kind of got myself to the trials really fit, but I was kind of scared of burning out. So I had a week off and then went to Glencoe. That's me on a very wet Buccleuch beg, and kind of spent the warmest night I've ever camped in King's House, because I got COVID somehow, somewhere. Got a temperature and went home, spent quite a few days in bed, and that was the point where I was starting to worry a little bit about the champs, because I had COVID the year before and I didn't really run properly for a couple months after it. Kind of suffered with a little bit of long COVID, so I kind of panicked a little bit, but was also like, just don't rush back into it. We'll see what we can get. Just keep going, keep chugging along with it. So managed to get some sessions back in. A couple of good tempo, managed to get quite a few good tempo sessions in, so like a 10 by 3 minutes. That was the only one hill session I actually did before Thailand, 6 by 3 minutes uphill. I didn't feel very well with my vaccines. I remember once I had the rabies ones and we had to get 2 doses, and my arms and things felt really quite swollen and sore, so that's more days off for that. I ended up just kind of hill walking a few Munros really. That was on Schoolhouse Ridge, I think. And then I was going to be, we raced FRAs together, which I think I've got a picture on the next slide. And then I was going to be racing Leeds Abbey Dash, but got ill again, so didn't. And then we were about to be flying out, so I feel like my prep was kind of very up and down, but got some good sessions in, but I equally had quite a bit of rest, feeling quite poorly.
Yeah, I had a similar experience to Holly. I think I went first for a trip to Barcelona, which has some very nice hills nearby, so did some really nice relevant training there. Came back, and I think fairly soon after that I was ill as well. Around the time we were meant to be getting vaccines, I was kind of thinking, if this is COVID, is it going to knock me out for the next month? Is there any point doing this prep and getting these vaccines and going through all the stress? Thankfully, it kind of blew away. Had also like a little niggle in my knee that definitely went away quite quick. So yeah, I kind of took Thailand prep from 2 different angles. Similar to Holly, kind of did these sessions on a treadmill where you kind of get the pace and put up and down. It might look like I had a really rubbish session where I just got slower and slower, but this was kind of discovering that the treadmill could get steeper and steeper for each K rep that I did, until pretty much on the point of failing and and fainting and having to walk kind of 2K home after that. But yeah, kind of felt like it was nice and relevant. I'm not too sure what happened here, but it probably wasn't good. And then the other angle was kind of like discovery of Strava segments. Pretty good fun, kind of just going to the Pentlands and doing a session based around Strava segments. Very quickly became addicted to getting Andy Douglas's. Seems like quite a fun way to wind him up. But my target at the time was actually Felix Wilson, so yeah. I think the funniest story was I was up Alimere and I was running towards Hilary Spenceley, who was out on a nice kind of lunchtime run. And I was really thinking about the next segment and trying to figure out where it started. Turned my ankle, probably swore as loud as I've ever sworn, right in front of her, gave her the shock of her life. And spent the next hour standing in a stream praying that it wasn't going to be a bad one, but thankfully, I think a couple of days off it was fine. But yeah, no, pretty similar in some ways.
And all the races that the others were told not to do, I got to go and do, which was good fun. And also, yeah, went on holiday trekking, but yeah, I mean, it all keeps you hill fit, so that was fine. But in terms of heat prep, I had very little, and the top picture in the corner is from a race I did when I was 17 in the Bahamas, which was very similar conditions, and I finished with an ice bag on my head from heat collapse, so that was good. I was just still bumbling along until
Winning
There's a
Skyline. We all raced FRAs. Me and Naomi were on the second leg, the long paired leg, which we had the fastest leg of the day. Although Angela did find out we were on that leg and said if she knew we were on leg 2, because she'd designed it to be so off-pathy, she wouldn't have let us do it. So kind of grateful we got to do that.
And I do remember running down the hill and Holly being like, "Oh, I'm going to keep my ankles a bit safe here."
I want to go to Thailand.
I did leg 3 with Ali and just got a really itchy arse halfway around, so gave it a good scratch. Yeah, that was fine.
And I think someone shouted "Slay Queen," so I started giggling.
Next quiz.
Next quiz, yeah. How many days was Naomi told out there? How many days before leaving was Naomi told she could go?
4.
7.
Close. 4 is close.
6.
James has it correct.
Nice.
3. Not very many. The Sunday before, I was rung by Angela saying that Philippa Williams had unfortunately been hit by a car on her bike and broken her collarbone. Disclaimer, I was not the person in the car. And she'd been told that they were going to try and get me on the team, because I'd basically been told that I was the reserve up until the 15th of October, which was 2 weeks before that date. So when that date came and went, I was like, well, yeah, clearly not going. But if Philly wasn't racing, it meant that everyone who was doing the uphill only was going to have to do the up and down as well. And with the kind of conditions out in Thailand, they basically really wanted another, an extra, basically, as it was quite likely that someone was kind of going to struggle or suffer with the heat. But they had to confirm with British Athletics if they had the budget to kind of change the name on the flight or actually buy a completely new flight. So Sunday was still very much a maybe, and then on Sunday it was still maybe, and then by Monday evening it'd been confirmed. So it was a bit of a whirlwind, and we left on Thursday, and I think my kit, which had been posted to me, arrived 30 minutes before we left. So that was the amount of time I packed in, which was good. So this was the team, pretty big team. It was the first time that the trail world champs and the mountain running world champs had been kind of combined. So the trail ones, that was counting like the 40k and the 80k long races, and then the mountain races counted as the uphill only and the up and down. And then there was a small junior squad in that as well. And then that was all the Scots on the team. And definitely formed a little bit of a breakaway in some cases, probably a bit of a clique, but it was all good fun. Then this was kind of what Chiang Mai looked like. So we were staying just outside of Chiang Mai, and kind of the main town was kind of slightly further in, and then the races were slightly further out. It's sort of sitting in a big kind of valley, essentially, with quite steep hills either side. It's quite kind of foggy down there, I think, because of like pollution and things. You could definitely tell, like when you went out up the hills, the air was a lot nicer.
Yeah.
And then temples everywhere, lots of temples. All pretty
Does
good.
anyone know? I don't think it means that. What does Chiang Mai mean? Does anyone know?
Do you know?
Any guesses?
I don't think I know.
I don't know. I think it means new town or something. Nothing too exciting.
That's a good question. What part of Thai culture gave Sasha a nosebleed?
Oh, bang on. So we
Do
obviously.
you want your Lindor?
So we flew out on the Thursday, which was like a week and a bit before the first race, which was on Friday the 4th of November.
Yeah, I think so.
So we had quite a few days before we had to kind of start worrying about tapering, relaxing. We're lucky enough to kind of enjoy all the local scenes, all the local delicacies. I think we were fearmongered a little bit about kind of watch what you eat, don't touch the milk, this kind of thing. I think you'd probably agree that like it was all fine.
Yeah.
No one really suffered from anything bad. There weren't any rabid dogs about, anything like that. It was really nice. Who's giggling in the back? There was some really cool temples about. So we went on some nice little city tours. They have lots of markets. They have night markets where everyone goes to get their dinner after working. So those were really cool. Tried some really cool food.
It's definitely a culture of kind of everyone eats out, essentially.
'Cause it's so cheap,
like
isn't it?
even anyone, not you're either cooking to kind of serve it and like as your job, or you're eating out.
To the point that I think like even the average person might not know how to cook because they just eat out so much. Yeah, really cool. I kind of this was the point where I realized it was really fun to take segments off Andy Douglas. And so we had time to do a few good interval sessions. There was a lake that most people did kind of laps around that was nice and flat. And then obviously the course was open, and set and marked. Well, actually we had to kind of navigate it to start, but we could do as many laps of it as we wanted. And by, I guess, about Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, we were beginning to make sure we were only going to like restaurants with probably Western food, more served, just to be safe. And starting to put the feet up a bit more and relax in the hotel rather than being out and about.
Did we? I think was it 10 days before, or a week?
That we flew out.
Yeah.
I think by the time we got there, it was more like a week before the uphill, because it took so long to get there. You got to go to the opening ceremony because I was racing in the uphill. We were kind of advised not to go because it looked really cool, but we were getting up quite early to race the uphill, so we just went for dinner.
And there was like a bit of a parade, and they had kind of bands and music and stuff, and then
massive firework display.
Really good firework display, and
but in the daytime, right?
Yeah, but it was still good. And then a few kind of speeches and stuff, including they had a presenter who was doing she was presenting the races as well, and she kind of sounded like she'd come from like the Hunger Games or something. She was a little bit over enthusiastic, but good to have her there, I guess. Some of you will recognise that as Angela Mudd.
It's her passport photo.
Why weren't women allowed into this temple?
It's kind of an open question, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyone want to hazard a guess?
Dress code?
No.
Who's willing to dare?
I guess.
They get all their kit off when you go inside.
No. The boys still got the clothes on there.
Right.
It's because women menstruate, and apparently that causes social instability. We weren't allowed inside. We were told to stay outside.
But what was slightly cooler at that temple was...
we wouldn't know.
Not that one specifically, but just nearby there was a Buddhist
you could go
monastery.
There's like a school, kind of Buddhist or monk school, I guess.
A little Q&A.
They invited you to come and speak with the students, essentially.
Yeah, and previously they hadn't been allowed to speak to women.
Yeah.
And in the last few years, someone had taken over who decided that was a load of shite. So we had a really nice afternoon sitting and chatting to the local kind of Buddhist monks and finding out about what brought them into their religion and what they plan to do in the future. So that balanced out the the disappointment for them.
What was the altitude?
Good question.
Not that high. The top of the
we'll sort of just get onto that. So in the days leading up to the champs, we did get to go around the routes, and it was only like a mile down the road from where we were staying. So what we were at 400 meters, The top of the uphill topped out just under 1400, and the up and down, can't read that got up to about 700-800 meters. So it really wasn't that high. I didn't feel any altitude. So
I think we have some pictures of the route, right?
oh yeah, we do.
Oh yeah, there we go.
So it was really gorgeous kind of jungle. Really lush, like I've never seen so many like brightly coloured butterflies and things on the course. It was quite a distraction on the uphill actually.
Quite a few people had to jump over snakes, I think.
Yeah, Elsie came back saying when
Yeah.
she recce'd the 40k, a snake had crawled through her legs.
There are also the crickets. They
Yeah.
rub their back legs together and make like a very loud noise. It sounds like a
screech,
car.
isn't it? Yeah.
It's almost like deafening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like these, yeah.
And I think actually some of the paths on the course they like had to clear before they were like raced on. Like certainly kind of just as we got there, I think they were still kind of getting their way through the
But
jungle.
it made visibility on snakes a bit easier,
Yeah.
so that was good. Yeah. That's well received. Yeah. Oh, actually, go back one. Little
That
extra.
one.
Oh no, just to the photos. Does anyone know who that is? Anyone got a keen eye?
Kim Cole.
Oh, nice one. Go, yeah, you can have a sweet.
That's not the best stroke.
So yeah, just a little side note. Kim was the bastard who took my record off the Munros, and this was the first time I'd ever met him. We went up, did the uphill course together, had a tea and a coffee at the same height of Ben Nevis, but with our tops off, and had just a really nice bonding experience. So that was, but this was only like a few days before the race, and I think in hindsight was probably a bit too late. So definitely something I'd probably not have done so close to the race. It was nice nonetheless, yeah.
Yeah, whose pre-race breakfast was this sad-looking meal?
You've only
one
got three
of the
options.
three of us.
Sasha.
Oh, that's a bit
Wrong.
offended by that.
It was unfortunately mine. Being veggie and having problems with IBS meant that was the meal I construed in the morning, basically, to be safe and not to eat meat really. And it's carb loaded enough. I feel like it was all right. Just grim. So during the week as well, we tried out these ice vests, which kind of think of it like a Salomon race vest or something you'd race in. It was basically that stuffed with a lot of ice packs that we were meant to warm up in to try and keep your like heart rate and sort of sweating to as minimum as possible.
So yeah, we practiced with them or for like a run or something
Yeah.
each, like
Yeah.
earlier in the week. And to be honest, when you start running in it, you feel shit because it's
so
carrying
heavy.
like, a few extra kilos around, so it doesn't feel that good. But I think they did help.
Yeah.
I would say as well, we drank a lot of slushies. I know our coach before we went was trying to advise us to drink as many like slushies as we could because they were like, he'd read loads of studies about them hydrating and cooling. And I think we did have quite a lot of slushies when we were out there. So yeah, then Friday rolled around and I kind of realised it wasn't a holiday anymore. So someone asked me the night before, like, what did I want to achieve? And I honestly hadn't really thought about it. So I kind of thought back to Euros when in the uphill I went off really quite hard and bonked big time. I didn't overtake a single person on the climb, and for quite a while I thought I was finishing last. So I just said to them, like, I didn't want that. I wanted to finish like enjoying it, overtake people on the latter half of the climb, and just feel like I've had a good run and sort of finish strongly for the team. But I was quite worried with the first flat mile that I would go off too hard. It was quite a risk. So I ended up going off really quite slowly and weaved my way through a lot of people. Kind of the four of us GB girls ran for quite a bit of it together towards the halfway around the race before it all became very strung out. I definitely faded towards the end of the race, but not too badly. Still managed to finish the top 20. But at the top, there was quite a sprint finish with a Czech athlete, and I don't think any of us had really had a sprint finish like that before. The other GB lads were kind of cheering us on at the top. And yeah, it was pretty much a bit of a dip finish, but my dip finish meant that we did come up from 3rd place team to 2nd place team because it would have gone on count back. But yeah, it was just really, really hot. That's all I can really say about it.
So then, similarly to the trial, we had Saturday off. I don't actually remember like a single thing we did, but we probably just sat around.
So we cheered the 40 and 80k people in, yeah.
So yeah, between Friday and Sunday, the 2 trail races were on. You can imagine running for like an hour or so in that heat was bad enough, but they were out for
I think 8 hours or
yeah,
so.
up to 8 hours,
80K people were
basically dawn to dusk. Yeah, absolutely no idea how they did it. As well as the ice vests before the race, they had kind of ice bandanas that they wrapped around their necks and kept topping up, which sounds pretty good, but I think the chafing I heard was pretty pretty horrendous by the end of the race. But yeah, kudos to them, and we had some really good results for the British team. So, but yeah, then eventually Sunday rolled round. I had quite an unexpected experience. I guess I expected to probably have a bit of a crap sleep the night before, usually get pretty bad nerves, and that was no exception. The nice thing was that this time round, at least, I knew that the kind of having a bit of a crap sleep the night before probably wouldn't do anything to my race, so I was kind of content with that. Just hope I didn't rustle Andy out of bed too often, going for 16 pisses in the night. But yeah, then the men had it quite lucky because we started like an hour and a half before the women for some reason, both times, both on Friday and Sunday. Yeah, I don't know, I still don't know if I actually did something wrong at breakfast, but I spent most of the morning kind of retching into a bucket. I was really nervous, but I didn't think that was really it because I never experienced that kind of sickness before. But I did have a bit of a guardian angel at one point, which was Sophie, Andy's coach, kind of saw me hanging over a bin half an hour before the start, and she said, "Oh yeah, I've got some sickness tablets if you want." And she literally had her race vest on. She was about to go for a run and watch the race. Whapped out a pill from her like upper pocket here, gave it to me. I didn't even question what it was because I was willing to try anything. And yeah, no memory of the rest of the day, but no, I'm joking. But yeah, it did seem to work, whether or not it was a placebo. So that was quite nice. But yeah, you can imagine by this point I was a little bit wobbly. The race started with such a fast kind of mile, and by the time we hit the trail, I was just absolute jelly. Most of my climb was spent. I feel like it was a really cool point, actually, similar to your uphill, where the 4 of us Brits were like 4 in a row. That was really quite cool, and the spectators were loving it. But pretty soon, my head was just getting way too hot, and I felt like I'd be verging on kind of like wobbly territory if I carried on pushing. So it was a bit of a funny experience walking, not because I was like at my absolute limit, but walking because I felt like if I wouldn't be able to finish the race. At the top of the course, there was a water point, so that definitely helped a lot. Everyone chucked water on you, like buckets of water. It was pretty good. And then inevitably on the descent, you get stitched. So, but yeah, it wasn't that much of a bad one. And by the time we hit the mile flat at the bottom, I was able to kind of make up a few places. Had it in my head that maybe the team would be requiring a few more bump downs, so had that motivation to kind of really sprint the finish. And yeah, crossed the line. Had a really kind of unique experience for the first time ever of just like uncontrollably wetting myself as I crossed that finish line. Obviously really happy about it. But yeah, probably an example of of how hot it was, because I was just completely unable to control myself. And yeah, you'll see at the end, I even did a dab soon after finishing, so clearly wasn't thinking my normal. Yeah, but yeah, that was my race.
Quite hard to follow on from Sasha's experience, but in some ways I feel like my experience was similar to Sasha's in that I just got unbearably warm on the climb. Yeah, was pretty conscious of going out too hard on the first mile, so kind of hung back a bit, and then the first bit of the climb was kind of all right, and then just kind of started combusting, I think. And then, yeah, the water point at the top really helped. Got heaps of icy water like over the top of me. And then, yeah, the descent, this descent was quite technical and quite narrow, and I think a lot of people really struggled with that. So that's sort of where I managed to make up like a lot more ground, to the point where I actually managed to catch the kind of one of the other Brits, which was quite nice because that kind of pushed us along the last mile. And not ashamed to say, just about managed to out-sprint her and to become the third counter, which felt quite nice. But yeah, then needed all the sponges and water I could get on my head at the finish.
Yeah, and pretty similar experience as well. I again started slowly like Naomi did, but I came through actually far more strongly than I thought I was going to. I really felt cooked from the Friday. But as I came through, I kind of noticed, I started recognizing a few athletes. I was like, these are really good athletes. I had overtaken the woman who won Euros earlier in the year. And I was just had such imposter syndrome, like I shouldn't be here. Maybe I'm going to like destruct from all this heat, but I kind of just kept pushing through. I think the kind of technical descent suited me maybe more than a few others. I overtook quite a lot on the descent. I had no idea really where I was going to finish, except that I knew there were some very fast girls around me. Ended up coming through an 8th, which was really unexpected and didn't really believe it, but cooked. It's so hot.
Yeah, and that led
We got
the
a
women
silver.
to the silver team, which was
Very nice
pretty
as well.
cool.
So based on those descriptions, whose foot do you think this might be? No clues really, actually. Nope.
Nope.
Yes.
Yeah, I had pretty horrible blisters on both my heels. I could feel there was something wrong on the way down. I think because it was so dry. And then yeah, I hopped into the water bath. They had these massive ice baths at the bottom. So I hopped into that when we got down there, and then took my shoes and socks off while I was in the ice bath, and the pain was really not nice as the open blister kind of touched the water, which everyone had probably peed in as well, knowing if Sasha was in there.
Disinfectant.
So yeah, tiptoed around for a few days.
Yeah. And then, so like most of these competitions, there was a pretty good party that followed.
There's the Hunger Games lady.
I think
Yeah, that is her.
Andy met his absolute hero in the commentator. There was a nice kind of sit-down meal with everyone that kind of very quickly got out of control, I guess. And then the following morning, we just flew off home. Sadly, I think quite a lot of us would have wanted to stay on, but yeah, with work and everything, and only having 2 months' notice, it wasn't ideal to kind of prepare and plan when there wasn't much holidays left in the year. But Naomi got it really nice and lucky with her situation.
Yeah, that my work on 3 days' notice were quite happy to let me have like a month off afterwards. So I stayed out and yeah, travelled kind of around the south of Thailand, north with some of the other team members, but had like kind of 10 days, 2 weeks, and then yeah, went to the south to do some climbing. So that's what that is. So yeah, I definitely got quite a good situation out of that. Managed to miss probably the worst month in Scotland of the year, which is November, I think. So yeah, it was all right.
So if anyone wants Thailand tourism advice, I'm sure Naomi would be very willing. So yeah, we came home incredibly jet lagged, like never experienced jet lag before, and it was really quite a process getting through it.
We landed at 6 in the morning, and both me and Sasha were online working that day, which was the worst day of my life, I think. Fell asleep in a meeting.
So did I. Yeah. But then, yeah, like I think we probably did slightly different things, but more, yeah, probably within a few weeks we were doing the same kind of cross-country season. Had a pretty good winter, whether or not it was because I guess racing in November sets you up for that kind of thing, I don't know, but yeah, it was nice to kind of jump back in in some slightly cooler weather where you don't have to worry about how much water you're drinking and whether or not you're going to faint. Yeah, we did East Champs, which Holly got the win for. It was very cool.
And I'd arrived.
Yeah.
I'd arrived home the day before, and it was about 30 degrees colder. And I, instead of falling asleep in a meeting, probably nearly fell asleep running around Stirling instead.
But it was for the team, so it was awesome to see.
And the post-race to Mayat was excellent,
Yeah.
as promised.
And then more recently, we were out in Callander for the National Cross Country. Little side note: we want to see a lot more cross country runners next year. You know, the club will cover your entry, so I want to see you there. Really cool to see. I think for the first time in ages, maybe ever, not too sure. The women got on the podium for the team. They got a bronze medal, which was really cool. Was it bronze? Yeah, bronze
And
medal.
kind of nice to note that actually there were more than the number of people that were
Yeah,
on the team. Like
yeah, we really managed to kind of get the attendance up.
Good
So
squad there.
we might be hill runners, but watch this space. We'll definitely be dipping into the other worlds. Yeah.
And then, this weekend we were all in Pitlochry on a Scottish hill runners weekend. They kind of have a few talks, a hill session, which is what the big picture down at the bottom is from, and then kind of a hill run and stuff. So, yeah, I think we're all going to dive back into some hill races pretty soon, I think.
Yeah. And for context, the Worlds this year are in Austria in the beginning of June. The trials for that are like the end of April. We're all going to have a good go at them. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Yeah, see what happens. Hopefully recreate the same experience again.
So yeah.
Oh yeah, a little side note. I've got a project to take Andy Douglas's park run record here at Portobello. So just because he came tonight, I wanted to put that in. Sorry.
And then thanks for listening. And that is indeed Sasha's famous dad from. Thank you. Are there any questions? Go for it.
Yeah, so I'll stop making daft jokes. But well, actually, so you mentioned food. You were talking about being vegetarian, and you sort of had the rice and carbohydrate stuff. And since Sasha, you were saying you were being sick before one of the races, this might be irrelevant, but I was just wondering how much you can model your food intake just prior to the race, if indeed you bother, to sort of release energy into your blood during the race, or is it all sort of dusted well before?
I feel like on the morning of you need something like pretty decent. Like you can obviously sort of the few days leading up to it sort of carb load a little bit, but I don't think anyone can really get by with not eating anything. And the breakfasts were, I feel like they were very meaty. Like they had a lot of rice, a lot of fish, a lot of meat or fruit. So that's how my meal ended up kind of looking like that.
I think a lot of it is, or I feel like I can probably say for all of us, we're not massively scientific about it. It's more just about kind of making sure that we've had enough, and I think that's kind of an easier thing to sort of gauge, I guess. In general, like I feel like there was plenty of food there. It just, like, I guess in your case, you're veggie, so that sort of limits like what you could eat. And I also can't eat gluten, so I spent a lot of time saying no soy sauce because that was just kind of the main gluten product that they eat there. But yeah, in terms of, there's plenty of rice and stuff. So you're, in terms of getting kind of carbs, I guess, which is sort of the key one, I guess. It wasn't too difficult in that sense, I guess. And I mean, if you wanted to eat Western food the whole time, you definitely could have. Some supermarkets had, like, I don't know, Cheerios or something in them as well, if you wanted.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that is I also never really overthink these things, but I don't know if it was the hotter climate that actually meant I should have thought about it more. So I like, quite often I have like something with eggs before running, and maybe some people would kind of stay away from this, but I never had any troubles with that before. But like, as I said here, it was queasy all morning, so it could have been that. Could have been mixed with the hot weather, could have been mixed with a bit of dehydration. But yeah, so definitely something I'll try and think about more next time if in hot weather.
What's the actual temperature in
like
Good question.
plus 30.
Plus 30
30
and,
to 36 degrees, I think.
And the
it's
humidity-
same-
70%.
Yeah.
Same humidity.
yeah. Which kind of climbed throughout the day as the temperature kind of dropped a bit.
So I
It was a
think
bit-
your
yeah.
race started at 9:30 in the
Yeah.
morning, and we started at 11. And actually, the difference, I think also, I guess another thing, the difference I found between racing at 11 and we'd done like an easy run on the course, maybe at like 7:30 in the morning.
It was quite
Like,
substantial.
it probably wasn't that much faster, the climb during the race, but just the kind of few hours later in the day just made it just so much harder.
Yeah, I think both me and Naomi did a session on the course, which ended up being just as fast as our actual race because we did it in cooler weather. So it was definitely a survival kind of expedition. Yeah.
How well supportive do you think you were by kind of British athletics? Because I guess world mountain racing doesn't hit the headlines as much as other athletics things.
I think Angela Mudge probably needs a bit of a shout out in that respect.
I think she
certainly in
is
terms
British
of-
athletics mountain running.
In terms of Scotland, there's obviously like a whole kind of support network there. In fact, kind of like Adrian Stott and Mark as well from up north. But they definitely look after you pretty well. And I think the kind of attitude towards hill running is slightly, or in terms of like the hill runners, I think slightly different to kind of track athletes. And everyone in general is probably just a bit more laid back, which probably helps.
Yeah.
I think Angela and people kind of ran the recce's with us, and they were really keen to get out. And I mean, Angela was giving us advice on the recce's, like when we were power walking, but we were covered in sweat. She was telling us to dip our hands in the soil to use as like grip, almost like chalk if you climb up or whatever. So she was actually still like handing out such good advice, like running around with us.
Despite being the team manager.
Yeah.
And you got some good perks with the kit and things. That look
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a few perks to that.
Was it the Ugandan team? Do they not win the...
Interesting.
Yeah, so on Friday, which was the uphill race, you'd imagine you start at the bottom of the hill and probably end somewhere near the top of the hill. I think there was a mix-up in their taxis and they ended up at the top of the hill, which you can't really kind of get away with. But yeah,
So no Ugandan athletes ran the uphill, but then they all won the up and down.
yeah.
But in the women's race, one of the they had, it was 3 to count, but you could have 4 in the race.
And one of them dropped
And
out.
one
They
of-
only have 3. One dropped out.
One dropped out in the women's, so they then didn't have a full team at the end, which I guess probably bumped us up.
Pumped us up an extra podium.
But yeah, in the up and down and the Kenyan and Ugandan teams really did dominate. Yeah, it was a bit of a clean sweep.
Is there many African nations?
Just those two, I
Yeah,
think,
just those
actually.
two.
Yeah, and the Kenyan team, they didn't run the up.
They didn't have a team. It was the one girl.
Oh,
They
really?
just had they only had
They only had
like a
one
couple of
girl.
athletes. They didn't have a team.
I
as
think it was
such.
only Uganda that had like
Yeah.
packed teams. I think,
Right.
and then they missed the uphill.
I guess it might be interesting to see if, like, I guess Austria is a little bit closer, possibly not requiring quite so much funding. I don't know if that would does that make a difference.
Are there any do's or don'ts that you take from this experience going towards Worlds in June?
It's a good question.
Maybe, but I'm not sure if I'd be able to listen to my own advice either.
I think all 3 of our biggest takeaway was the more relaxed and like easy you were out there, not stressing about this, that, or the other. Then A, nicer time you had, and B, I think most of us ran better. A lot of people were quite the same probably people that had funding and are more pro athletes, far more stressed about the situation. I think from our perspective, and probably didn't enjoy it as much maybe, and were maybe getting a bit more stressed about their performance and things that maybe whether you can control at home, but in a foreign country you're not going to get your favourite snacks or whatever if you don't bring them. So I feel like I learnt that like being laid back and easygoing is really key when you're racing somewhere as foreign as that.
Yeah, I feel like when I was a junior, I probably tried to do something differently on race day. Have hopefully learned that you don't need to do anything differently. I mean, obviously if the climate's hot, then you do need to think about that. But yeah, definitely agree with Holly there. The more relaxed I am, the better I race. So trying to recreate situations like that.
Has having raced there given you confidence that if it is high 20s, 30s, and
No. But would maybe, hopefully be able to do
I'd
that
probably
more,
try and
but-
do more hot sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did a couple of those treadmill ones, but I could have probably done a couple a week and really honed in on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think getting to access to a heat chamber, if you could, would probably be quite a good one. And like Andy said, he did hot yoga. I feel like that would have been a good addition to the training plan as well.
Where's the trial for this year's?
So there's for the 40k, it's 3 Peaks in Yorkshire. I'm going to be running that, trying to kind of. So they're a week apart. I think there's enough time in between to recover. If I don't do the uphill. So and then the uphill is up Skiddaw again, and that's on the
It's up a
Friday.
different route though. It's up Alec Pike rather than the
right.
straight up the front.
Oh, nice.
And the up and down is in Sedbergh, which is actually where it was like the first time the trials were held.
Yeah. Interestingly, this year the up and down is like a 2-lap course of like a 350-meter climb. It's a bit longer, but obviously in terms of getting like gels on board and stuff, you have another option at halfway. So yeah, it should be quite a different format and different things to think about for sure.
I came last when I did the Sedbergh junior trial. 97.
It's brutal. It's a funny crowd actually, because people talk about mountain running and fell running, but they are very distinct often in the people that go to them. It's almost a shame that they're not bigger races, that they just decide to call the trial, established traditional races that they just say, yeah, we'll make this the trial. Because it'd be nice to have hundreds of people show up, regardless or not, if you're going for the team or not, yeah. But I think they're definitely working at that. You can imagine Angela's trying to, push those two groups together a bit more often, because it's a shame that they're so separate. Cool.
That might be it.
Any last questions? No? Good.
I think there's still a Lindor we need to chuck in
Yes,
that direction
we'll
somewhere. Nice one.
Could somebody, Gio, can you just stick the lights on again, please? Yep, thanks very much. Very insightful, entertaining, lots of good information, I think, to take away. So yeah, just a reminder that just to recommend a donation for Maggie's charity and to Holly's Magic Bucket if you have it. If you don't have any cash on you, don't worry, we'll share the link QR code. So, yeah, that's just of course, apologies to Andrew Douglas for
Andy's actually a future Carnethy member, so it's very exciting.
So harass him more until he joins.
So yeah, just on behalf of everybody here, thank you to the three of you. That's really good.
Thank you.